This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast. I'm one of your many hosts here today, Bud. Looking forward to the conversation today with new guests on the pod, not just Data Mike, but also we have the Calumet Breweries team, the small but mighty wholesaler from Northwest Indiana, where we've got Mark, third generation CEO, right, Mark?
That's correct. Love
it. Awesome. And then Dan, general manager. And then last but not least, we got Mike, the sales manager, and the guy behind the pedal harder, move faster, sell more shit. Right, Mike?
Always.
That's right. So here's what's exciting about the conversation today with Calumet. They're not the biggest share, but they make up for it in hustle. They work like hell, and it's always been a pleasure to work with them. And what was it, Mark? Maybe about 2.5 years ago, we started working together, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
Something like that. And when all in on gross profit and all in on rep visibility turned the RTDs into a strategic weapon, and we're not just coasting, we got to make everything count, is one of the things that Mark loves to talk about as well with his sales team. So thanks for joining us today, boys.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome, Bud.
Mark, can you fill the listeners in more about Calumet Breweries and where y'all got started? Y'all been around in business for quite some time now.
Yeah, so I'm third generation. My grandfather started the business, just like many other wholesalers, back in 1933. So we're 93 years old, and we look forward to reaching the century mark in about 7 years. So in any event, I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to be in this business. I feel fortunate because not everyone gets to do it, but I really enjoy my working with our employees and with our retailers and with our suppliers. And it's a very basic business, but it continues to provide security for a lot of people.
Love it. That's awesome. And so 100 years in 32 then?
That's right.
I love it. That is awesome. Congratulations on that milestone ahead. That is so exciting. So where you're really interesting, I remember coming into the market, working with y'all when we were launching VXP. And I remember looking at share of shelf and being like, man, where's all the Bud Light and Michelob Ultra? And it's like, well, but duh, Bud, we're in a much smaller share than what you're used to dealing with. So what's it like running a market where you're on a small share side versus the kind of share owner of the market? I think that's always one of the things that was very interesting about working with y'all.
So it's an uphill climb every day, but we have a great team of people that accept the responsibility for creating share, which they do, and they have been. And, we fight the good fight, for space and et cetera, constantly. It's constant. It keeps you sharp. It makes you a good wholesaler. Our competition definitely understands that we're not pushovers. So, you're on the market every day. We're out, all of us are out, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing what you have to do to grow share.
Making friends is our business, and pissing people off is our specialty, right, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pissing off competition, that is.
Without a doubt. But it has its challenges, but you know what? It's been this way, and it's rewarding. I mean, the people come here, and we tell them, when you're successful here, you can be successful anywhere else in the world. You work hard here, but the rewards are fantastic, and they truly are.
That's really awesome. And you all run a lean team, high hustle. How do you feel like you get that hustle mindset out to the crew every day? That is one of the things that, people listening, either you're a rep or team lead or even a leader listening, like, how do you instill that hustle mindset day in and day out for the team?
It's positive reinforcement, but I mean, you pat them on the back when it's deserved, and you do that a lot. You don't beat them up for the mistakes, but you put your hand on their shoulder, and it's kind of a show me, not tell me kind of situation. So we're very fortunate that here we have enough, from top down. We have a lot of people who have been in this industry almost their entire life, and it makes it much easier to inspire people when they know that there's someone there who can do it, and at times will do it if you can't. Right?
That's awesome. Now, Mark, when we started working together, we got introduced together through a few different things and through a few different partners in the industry. And I think it was through an event. And then I came down and did a chat with you guys. We had lunch together, right? You guys took me out for pizza somewhere, didn't you?
That's right.
Out to House of Pizza.
House of Pizza.
How we met, Bud, almost 2 years to the day, there was the BBD Productivity Summit.
That's what it was.
You were presenting, and I, along with our colleague Amy, we were watching. And you and I had a few Q&As going back and forth. And then I was able to share the VXP program with Mark and Mike. And it just took off from there. And you're right, we had you down for pizza at House of Pizza, one of our local joints. And we had some good conversation and good time.
That's where we started. I love it. That's awesome. So we moved, talk to me, and Dan, maybe you kind of take the lead on this. We moved from a volumetric mindset to a profit mindset. And how do you feel like that changed the interaction with your team?
Well, I think what's been very important for us the last couple of years is that there's been more visibility through the VXP program to gross profit and how that looks versus volume, especially as it relates to the 2023 volume loss. And how did we recover from that? It's not necessarily throwing more boxes out there. What boxes are we throwing out there that are going to return back to the house on the GP side? So once the team leads, especially, understood that, and they were able to teach that and cascade that down to the sales rep. Took a little bit of time, but once they actually started seeing it, what it meant to sell the right package, there were times where, we're all challenged with space at retail. There were times when the sales rep would make a decision to sell in a higher gross profit item instead of a volume moving item, because it returned more back to not only them, but obviously to the house.
That's awesome. Now, when you're doing this, Mark, were you ever scared about showing profitability and being more detail oriented with how you as a distributor make money on every case? Is that a concern? Was that something you thought about? It's one of the things that I hear a lot from owners and leaders when they're thinking about moving this direction.
Right. So there certainly was some anxiety, as it relates to opening up, gross profit information to our employees. But, it also, I think, the balance to that was the fact that they actually, I think, felt more like they were running their own business, and they had control, as much as they could, control of what they were providing to the house as far as, an improved gross profit pool. So going back to the original, when we originally met, we had a significant event in the spring of 2023, and it was not positive. And up until that time, we had been primarily case equivalent, concentrated as far as how performance pays. So when you lose a certain amount of case equivalence, but you still maintain, your same set of employees, and somehow you have, and it doesn't come back right away, if at all. But then I think you have to turn to the gross profit side of things to say, this is how we're going how we have to approach, catching up the gross profit dollars, because we still have the same expenses. And so the balance of opening up that gross profit pool to our employees and our team leads was, I think, paramount to us being able to see the results that that we've had so far now that we've been with VXP for this period of time. And I can tell you it's meaningful. And it's a significant way of making up for some things that we didn't necessarily have control over to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. You did kind of take ownership of that. And Mike, when you talked about getting the team leads and coaching them up to where they can start to understand that, what'd that process look like? Do you feel like this is something they grabbed right away, or it took them a little bit of time to really start to comprehend what you were trying to get them to learn?
Well, it took some time. And if you haven't run your own business before, the concept is a little foreign because of the many years of volume driven, success, right? So you're turning them in a different direction here, and we start to talk about gross profit, and then they are a little shocked at what they see, and so making them understand that. And I think, Bud, your first meeting with all four of us at the same time was, you're going to have to continually talk about gross profit, and then help people understand that. And it was a full year of really, enforcing that to make them where they really would question it, and they would take a look at it, and are we growing in that segment, and then what choices do we make, because now we're looking at this from a different vantage point and look at what the return is. And so they started to look more over at those returns in their success and execution than they were just that volume component. So it took a little time, but they've got a pretty good grip on it now.
I feel like that's one of the big topics when we launch new clients, is trying to get that culture right from the top down. How do you get that culture of the profit mindset down to the team leads and to the reps? And you and I, on a couple of different occasions, you've mentioned that the reps had asked, well, what's the GP on that? Right? You bring in a new product, or maybe even a new supplier, and the first thing they ask is, what's the GP on that? So what are some good tips? And this could go out to all three of you, but what are some good tips to actually get your reps to pay attention to what is the GP on that, right? And get that culture, that mindset change over to GP.
I'll start. It's repetition. It's every day, like you had said, talking about those factors, and then combining anything else that, if you've been in the industry long enough, what's working, what's not working. And so you say, okay, look, here's a great product, and we've brought on new lines and new suppliers, and you end the sentence with and it's great GP. And because of the way that they're paid, and if they understand how they're paid, it's a simple matter for them to then convert. They understand that, and they do it. It just helps build those brands that bring back high gross profit.
And I think just unfortunately too, Mike, is that GP to us is also the GP to the retailer. So you create that conversation with them and create the win-win, so that the retailer understands it, and our sales rep are really working towards that, because if they're successful, then we're successful.
It was interesting, just going back to how we initiated the relationship and started the program that VXP had, was the transition from going from I can't emphasize this more, going from a volume-based at-risk compensation plan to something that actually had or provided more meat on the bone, so to speak, with, by looking at not only just gross profit dollars, but gross profit percentage as well. So when we initially opened up to our employees the concept, at first they were more interested in finished product loss, how that penalty or how that affected, what was that going to be? How did that work? As opposed to looking at it from the aspect that, look, there's over on this side of on this side of the page is where the volume and gross profit things are that will certainly overcome whatever that finished product loss sensitivity was. And that really kind of opened itself up not too long after we started. That finished product loss, now I don't think we even talk about it. And even though we do have it, it's the nature of the business, but it's not it. There is so much more upside potential for increasing at-risk compensation because of of the goals we set and how we manage our relationships with our suppliers to make sure that our gross profits remain healthy so that we can translate that down to our employees and when we put our programming together.
Isn't that so interesting, Mark, that you put something out there and the feature around finished product loss where you have the ability and the opportunity to actually lose money, and you have this loss aversion that happens, that
Right.
all the focus just like goes, I don't want to lose anything. I don't want to lose anything, even though there's X number of percentage above, way outweighs the magnitude of making upside. And it does take a little bit of time for everybody to kind of grapple with that loss aversion side, because people are more terrified. Anybody who's a parent on the phone, take your cell phone away from your teenager and watch them lose their mind, and buy them a new one and watch them not thank you for it too, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. So I love that you brought that up. But you feel like the team has gotten past that now?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Mike, Dan, I don't think, I haven't heard anything about finished product loss. From that,
We're more proactive, so we don't even get to that point because of the awareness behind it and around it.
and the nature of finished product loss is, you can be mindful of it and at the same time get over the fact that it might be a takeaway. But what it does is it prevents it. So therefore, from an expense, on the expense side of our P&L, what we're experiencing is reduced as well, which then you could take that and you can apply whatever those savings are and put it back into the at-risk pool that you split throughout the sales organization, and from setting goals and things like that. So it becomes reinvesting in yourself, actually.
Love it. Well, one of the fun things that happened over our relationship together, working with the Calumet team, is Indiana changed all of its legislation around RTD drinks, which was all centered around a liquor control product, and that it's a controlled state, and that only one liquor distributor was able to sell these products. Now, with some new legislative changes, and there's an ABV, there's a percentage of ABV. If it's below that number, beer distributors and licensees like you guys are able to sell that product. That was a whole new opportunity for y'all, right? Around RTDs, it was some you didn't have any to work with. The only ones you had were some like wine-based RTDs that are out there on the market. But when you moved into the RTD space, how did you approach launching a brand new RTD brand so successfully versus what you did before, and now what you've got at your fingertips with VXP? And maybe Mike, you start with that on your perspective, because I know you kind of led that charge as far as how do we want to launch these brands differently with this new mindset and this new capability versus what you would have done 3 years ago.
Sure. Well, first we have to say that most of what we brought on would have already been in the marketplace. So I like to call them orphans. They were put out there without much attention. So we had to kind of straighten up the market and bring a different mindset to what was going on. Beer distributors act differently. So from a merchandising perspective and everything else, we had a lot of work to do there before we could really get deep in the weeds on whatever else it meant. But at the whole time, staying with the subject at hand today, as we explained to the team, keep looking at the gross profits that these return. And it wasn't just organic. I mean, our team has done an amazing job at growing these and using the services, et cetera, that, we provide as a beer wholesaler, and really grabbing onto it and making it their own and enjoying the returns that it brought, just through good execution, et cetera, to the point where, I can say we can hold our head above most in the state of Indiana for our accomplishment.
That's awesome. You gotta love that. And you've got like a huge book of them too. You've got a lot of competition internally in the book. How do you feel like you manage the multiple partners that are all in the same category?
It's not as difficult as you might think. I think because the category is growing so fast, retail is really ready to listen And again, we don't just use GP for our own purposes here. We explain that to the retailer, and we're gaining space in some of those places that were haunted by dusty, bottles and et cetera, and growing it that way. And when you explain the returns that they're going to see in gross profit, because our team is understanding what that means, it's not as hard as it sounds. It really works very well.
Love it.
I think it's crucial to emphasize what you said there too, where a lot of these RTD brands were already in the market. It's not like you're just launching a brand new product that people are excited about. The market, the consumers are super excited about this new product coming out. They're already there, and whoever had them might not have done the best job as far as getting shelf space, merchandising them, right, getting them out in front of the consumer. So I think that's really, really hard to relaunch a product, right? Harder than an initial launch, in my opinion. And what's super important here is that you guys did this without incentives and objectives, right? That the sales reps you didn't have to dangle that dollar figure out there as far as an incentive or an objective to get distribution, to get the market cleaned up, to get better shelf space, to get displays. And I think that's super important because we've talked many times when we're setting goals and how do we actually get the reps to pay attention in these products without throwing an objective or an incentive on it. And I think what we did was great, right? Some of the brands that you had to purchase, we had a return on our investment. We incorporated those into the goals. We're very transparent with the reps about it. New brands, we did not build them into the goals. It was free GP. So talk a little bit about how that went, right? With our planning, how did that go execution-wise in the market, and how was the feedback from the reps by going about it that way? And I'll add one more thing because I get a lot of questions from other distributors of how do we get away from objectives, and they feel as if they have to have objectives to get execution. So I mean
incentive.
Great, yeah. Go for it, Mike.
So conversely, what you said, though, I believe you've been incentives. We don't truly offer incentives. We build good objectives, right, that are based in the philosophy that we're talking about today. And the team has become accustomed to that, right? As you said. So when the team leads, we brought them in as well, which we would not have normally done, to make them a part of that objective building process with the GP in mind. They would constantly have a good understanding of what the accomplishment could return. And that's what really helped. They went out there with the idea that, if we do a good job, we are going to be rewarded. And in that, it comes from, the sale of a case. To the point now, I can tell you, Mike, where, we're building 150 case displays of RTDs in places that we would have been putting something of a far lesser GP just to create volume. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it works that well once they buy in. And if you have everyone educated and you have them participating, that's very important. They have to know that.
Keywords: having everybody educated, right? Same page, same culture, same belief.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and we're to the place now where they'll go and seek it. We don't even have to really tell them. They seek it.
So Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. When you talk about these displays that we're building, I know that we're not incentivizing per display. But what that display does, it creates the gross profit that feeds back into the goal that helps the salesperson be able to attain, more than 100% of whatever that goal is, right?
Absolutely. They run hand in hand, Mark.
Exactly. Yeah. So it could be considered somewhat of an incentive just by how large it is. But it's not based upon a specific accomplishment. What it does is it feeds back into their profit pool that then helps them achieve their at-risk compensation.
Absolutely, because there are goals for both, for volume and for GP, but right. it drives that side of it, and it takes away that flavor of the day. That anytime anybody can come along and say, "I'm going to give you this for this many boxes or for this distribution," it removes that and really puts you on a solid base for what's returning to the house and to that individual. It's a win-win all the way around.
Right. And I think Mike, to further that as it relates to that our compensation is based upon volume and gross profit. Correct me, but the weights on the as a percentage of what the at-risk compensation is what percent?
Yeah, we're at 70% on GP.
On gross profit,
Right.
30% on volume.
Well,
So
yeah, it's a smaller but a minor factor that has finished product loss.
yeah,
but
the finished product.
it's
Right.
negligible. The GP is what drives the system.
Right. The meat on the bone is the gross profit number that actually captures the most at-risk compensation.
Yes.
So that
By far.
150 case display of an RTD or an innovation product, which at least in our experience, the gross profit pool is higher. That creates a lot of value and a lot of capital to the salesperson that has that sold in.
Absolutely.
One of the things you guys have done too is you've been collaborative with the suppliers around what you're doing. How has that relationship with suppliers changed with the new lens you're looking at? Whether you're defending profit, advocating for more profit, how has that relationship adjusted, shifted, gotten more entertaining, gotten less entertaining with your supplier partners?
But I think in the beginning, since I handle a good majority of that, they scratched their head in the beginning and said, "What are you saying to me?" And then, well, we're more interested in day-to-day sell through than we are in, like you said, a shiny bauble. We'd like to have something that's long lasting. So let's look at our GP. Let's keep that high. Give our team the expectations and good objectives. Make sure that we're putting them in a place to win, and then we all win. So take those dollars that you're offering me for investment in incentive, and let's turn that back into trade practices like sampling or something else for display activity, et cetera, as opposed to, every other day trying to rebuild the machine for the next guy that comes along. And if you're consistent with that, some of them took it to heart immediately. Others, it took a lot longer to convince. But I can tell you that even those who are not solidly behind exactly what we do will now listen, and they will say, "I understand because I know what you're going to say." And so we talk about GP before we talk about anything else from a incentive side.
And on the supplier front, Dan, with finished product loss, any kind of change thought processes with the relationship there too, and the focus around that and supplier relationships, or just kind of like everybody's happy, the market's uber clean?
Well, I think there has been a little bit of a culture shift with that. As long as we're, having that conversation with them, is that we can't take all of the risk. Are you going to share some of that risk? So that's where you look at the GP side of it, not necessarily the volume side. If we focus on it, or put a primary focus on the GP side, not necessarily just throwing volume out there, we'll control the finished product loss, but yet we're still lifting on the GP side. So there's been a better understanding on the supplier side with that, I think. Mike, do you agree or no?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's evident in the returns. You can see it in their earnings.
Love it.
Well, sorry I'm late to the game, everybody.
Hey, Ross.
Hey, Ross is here.
Yeah, love it. Did the VPN finally work?
Yes, I had to pretend like I was in the United States and not in Portugal.
Oh, neat.
So, so if you're thinking about recording a podcast from Portugal, you may want to rethink your software that you're using versus ours.
We survived it, though. We got you in the mix.
Yep.
Well, I think I caught myself up in in some of the notes here, but I think one of the interesting things about your all's implementation was the involvement of the team leaders from the beginning. Then also it taught us some lessons around the team leaders from a compensation perspective. Did you guys get a chance to kind of dive into that? Or, I think that's an interesting element of your all's journey.
We haven't gotten a chance to dive into it. I think it's a great place to go next.
Excellent. I'm sorry, what was the question again, Ross?
So your team leader's journey. So I know that when we did the setup, and like I said, there were things that we actually learned from your all's implementation that we've carried forward since. specifically in how we structured their compensation initially, then what it kind of morphed to and why. Also, it's kind of a side piece. You guys also had the sales team leadership in there from the very beginning, very hands-on. And I think that's not necessarily something we see every time too. So maybe speak to how their compensation structure inside the program evolved and why, and then also how you feel about how hands-on they've been all the way through the process from start to execution.
Sure. So initially, yeah, we wanted to again open the book in a very careful way, because the initiative was with the team leads was that, look, we're introducing this to you so that you can help mold it and create it, and then you can also take ownership of it and be responsible for how it makes its way all the way down to the DMs, to our regular salespeople. And in any event, which they were very appreciative, because we had discussed early on, before we had the relationship with VXP, different ways of trying to change our compensation method, and in order to adapt for what happened in 2023. And so, in any event, because we were actively involved in shared ideas, when we introduced VXP, it was important for them to be part of the engine on the train. So, in developing on the compensation side, we kept the at-risk compensation relatively the same as it was before under the old system. And in any event, what we wanted to do was to be able, besides just changing that, not knowing what the results were going to be once we implemented VXP, so then we could more finely tune what that at-risk compensation is, which is different today than it was back when we started. It's both pools, both base and our at-risk have increased. So, and that's because we've decided to reinvest some of the gross profit that we've grown because of how we're going to market with the VXP program. So they were instrumental in making sure they understood that, and not only just for themselves, because it was certainly a different concept, but also in how they were able to get their districts and those salespeople, to understand it and grow it, because they knew that if they were growing it through their district's salespeople, that actually creates growth for them. So it was really interesting to see, because there was proactive embracement of it, and that's not something that we necessarily have seen for a while, because we were doing things the same way for so long. And in any event, there's also another component here, and I'm not sure we can go down this road, or we can wait for another time, is that we also went through a reroute of our route to market as well as implementing VXP. So we redistrict different, through demographics, geographics, the districts, and how we were going to market with we basically broke up our grocery, our on-premise, and our package, and we combined them in a certain way that made it more efficient for us to be able to go to market. And so we had two things, and it was a good opportunity to be able to combine those together, because there was some, the teeter-totter was going pretty fast there for a while, but then once we grooved into it, is really when we saw the benefits, come. And that was the VXP plus the fact that we had a reroute. Mike, Dan, am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we went from segmented to geographic to spread the responsibilities and give different opportunities for different things.
And did
full transparency. We push pretty hard now for people to put more dollars at risk for the team leaders and the reps.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's because the lessons we learned from you all.
Yep.
You're exactly right, Ross. We did the same, and we've done the same thing, effective with our last compensation review.
And I'm wondering, because do you think the reps were pensive about, oh, sorry, not the reps, the team leaders, do you think they were pensive about having additional dollars put at risk? I mean, they were there hands-on through the implementation process, but, I didn't see anybody raise their hands and say, hey, take money from my base and put it towards more variable.
Right. I think they were, they were willing to kind of see how it all worked out from the start. If we would have gone back and started again, I think we probably would have bumped their at risk more at that time, as opposed to waiting to see what happened during the initial rollout and the initial period with BXP, gaining the traction it did. But we made up for that, and I could tell you it felt really good to be able to, invest in that when we did, which they were very appreciative of.
Yeah, and part of that too is, obviously we had to learn it and see it, but we started at an 85% threshold for the payout, and then we could obviously go beyond that. So we had that component in there to give us an opportunity to see how BXP was going to look and feel for us as we learned it. And then we made the adjustments, as Mark said, during this past compensation review.
What's exciting for me with the team leads at your operation too is that they were willing to come back to you and preaches to some of the culture side of what you all have created, and the trust and the transparency that comes along with implementing something like VXP and being more open about how the business makes money and how you impact the outcomes of the business. They were willing to come back and say, hey, I feel like I'm busting my ass and I'm making right around what a sales rep is making. And I think I'm worthy of more. Now, we as a group, we know more about this because we work with you three around how to digest and make these adjustments as a partner. And so we know behind the scenes, it was like, they've got bigger base. The challenge that they were having is like the average of the average is what their pay is for variable. And then if you've got 4 reps and 2 of them are killing it and 2 of them are not, you kind of fall in the middle ground, and you do have 2 reps making more than you as a team lead. So, but you should be really proud of yourselves that they were willing to come ask, and they were willing to be open and talk to you about it. That gave you an opportunity to hear and listen to learn to what they were looking for, and we were able to hear and listen to learn to what they were looking for too, and we were able to find good results. And to us, anytime you have a middle management tier that engaged, you're more likely to get stronger results than if they're disengaged or if they're not paying attention to the outcomes in the right way.
That's correct. And I think it's important to note, based upon our current trends compared to our peer group, we're doing pretty well. I mean, we're doing very well. And I think it's because of the fact that they believe in its trust, and, the way that it's supposed to work is a direct result of their engagement, and that the compensation itself, that component of it has fixed itself, actually.
Well, something that Ross said last episode, where Ross said it's important to be part of a winning team, and where you were focusing on volume exclusively before VXP, and now it's volume and profit and how they collaborate together, and a lot on profit. We talked about, Mark, around how we're going to get cultural doom loop out of the system.
Absolutely.
And we're just watching a red number and volume go down and down and down. And we can decouple profitability growth from volume growth or decline. And that's what your team has done so well. And now they feel like they're winning again. And that attitude of just being on a winning team, knowing how the rules are played and that you can win, that just changes the cultural dynamic of a team.
I mean, it's crazy to me that, I independently of this conversation, and I had a high margin supplier specifically mention you guys. And, I didn't say anything. I just let them talk on about, how you were an exceptionally high performing distributor. And I kind of smirked and kind of left it at that. But it's interesting because I've even seen it, talking to suppliers, how this one in particular noticed you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we feel really good about what we've accomplished so far, and we feel that the next steps here will be more. But as you know, we've talked about using data to identify opportunities and things like that we might or to fill gaps, excuse me, that exist that we don't really realize, and that is going to translate to additional gross profit and possibly even higher gross profit on a per CE basis, which is really impressive for us to see that gross profit per CE be as strong as it is, and where we started and where we are today. It's pretty amazing. Now, from a supplier standpoint, I mean, I feel really good sharing this, is the fact that we have a very healthy relationship with all of our suppliers, whether it's innovative, in a smaller format, or going up all the way to our lead supplier. And in any event, they can sense that there's a difference here now. The ones that have known us for a while, there's a difference, and it's something that is pretty special. And it also is like, our performance speaks for itself too. When somebody decides, hey, maybe we're not performing as well in a certain area, but which we can always address, and that's fine. And we do that positively. But it's also, we've talked to other wholesalers that are involved with VXP, and trying to help cultivate some of what we've done here, so that they can understand, how we've gotten from point A to point B to point C, and then hopefully they've had the opportunity to see the positive results like we have, or maybe they're just still transitioning.
Yeah. Contrary to popular opinion, Mike Hagerty is one of our best IT support clients that we have in our network.
Well, we haven't started yet. Hang on.
We're coming. We're going for it, bud.
Well,
I still, that other client that you're referencing, Mark, when we got back on the phone with him, has said Mike was just as surprised to get a phone call about an IT question as I was to be calling Mike about an IT question.
Exactly.
Oh,
Well, IT is the way of the future, and that's our next step that we're going to concentrate on in order to take our business to the next level. Things are changing fast. The horizon, the more focused you can see the horizon, the better it's going to be. And sometimes the horizon can be kind of foggy.
No, I appreciate you bringing up, Mark, around supplier relationships too, because you're a very interesting market in terms of the socioeconomic diversity of your market. You've got a very urban inner city community and a very rural community, and you've got, so I like to call the rich, right, yoga pant mom area as well too, the well-to-do affluent area too, and everybody in between. So that means that you've got a complex portfolio. You've got certain pockets where certain types of products over index versus others. And you've just got to be on your toes with managing a bunch of different products and a bunch of different suppliers, because they all play an important role in a diverse market like yours. Where if you were in cornland or only in an urban city, you might have pieces of your puzzle that didn't make as much sense to focus on. But you guys aren't like that. You cover a lot of everything from a bank store, Mike, all the way to, a big convenience store, a big
absolutely.
grocery store,
Casinos.
and that rural store as well.
Yeah, we have casinos in the whole shop. We got from top to bottom. I think it bears mentioning how easy you've made this, though, bud. You guys have been accessible and informative, and at every step, we haven't had to come back and, have anything negative to say. It's been a very open relationship, which I think is something that should be mentioned.
Oh, you're too kind.
Yeah. The collaboration has just been really great. So anytime that we need something, like Mike said, we reach out, and everyone has just been very accessible and returned what we've asked for. I like to give and take on, asking for different reports, and you're coming back to me and saying, what are you actually looking for? And we're creating those things that, help us identify potentially something that we're not seeing based on how we're looking at it now. But if we just turn the dial a little bit differently, you're creating that for us, and it's exciting. I mean, we got a long way to go yet.
That's awesome. And I think that's too the testament of like the meeting we're going to have later today around Cal Brew 4.0 and where we want to take what you've got invested in and where your outcomes are and how you can evolve what you're working with us and with other partners of yours too. And we're going to play a small role in that evolution of your business as well too. So we're excited to play a role and continue to evolve with you guys and do the customer service side of ongoing relationship too. So we love working with y'all. Y'all do a great job, and you take a lot of advantage of the ideas and opinions that we have and have executed them very well to a T. So you got to pat yourself on the back for that for sure.
Well, thank you, Bud. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ross. I really appreciate our partnership. It means a lot.
Awesome.
We appreciate you guys too. Thank you.
Yep. Well, for anybody out there in listener land that wants to learn more about what we're doing or get connected with the Calumet Brew team, please email us at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. You can drop us a comment on the YouTube and or a comment on the Spotify. I don't think Apple Podcasts is smart enough to do comments yet, but maybe they will at some point someday. Why would one of the biggest technology companies be innovating?
Don't get us blacklisted, man.
We wouldn't get
wait
blacklisted.
too long for updates.
We couldn't get blacklisted.
Don't say negative things about Apple.
We're too niche to get blacklisted. Nobody cares about us, right?
Our app, dude. Everybody uses Apple for the Apple Store.
Everybody uses Apple for their Apple Store. I love it. Well, Cal Brew team, thanks for joining us today. Y'all rock, and we will be in touch soon. This is just one of a bunch of different episodes in a long run we've got planned that'll really kind of pull together and daisy chain. So thank you guys for kicking us off today, and cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much.